In America, we can put a child away for the rest of their lives without the possibility of parole. We can put a child away forever without even ever discussing it again. At the same time, and we can even, in some places, I believe, you can even execute children. At the same time, an 18-year-old can go off to war, kill and maim people, and see and witness people being killed and maimed with 3 months training. But that same individual is not deemed responsible enough, or even their brain mature enough to choose alcohol and to drink wisely without the supervision of adult. But at 16, that individual can drive. Now, if you look at crimes against children, so not crimes, involving children, like things that are crimes because they are children, so not like, buying a pack of cigarettes or something as a crime because you're under 16 or whatever it is in your state. But like, look at a sex crime. I think sex and violence are the two most heinous areas where we see crime in America, or we deem as morally heinous. You can be 14 and have sex with a 16-year-old, and that 16-year-old has committed a crime because we think that that 14-year-old is not mature enough to have made the decision to give their bodies over to someone else, particularly when that person is elder to them. So this minor, what constitutes a minor? So if we look at it this way, it's like we're saying, even and I go back to this caffeine and all these other things that affect the brain that we don't think are appropriate for children, to say that there is something about puberty, about physically growing, that is not mature. We accept this in many areas, and so therefore we protect children. But at the same time, that same child were to commit a heinous crime, well, we will prosecute them as an adult and treat them as an adult. And that I find objectionable, because that's the whole point, is that children are not mature enough to make such decisions. And so we must therefore look at their caretakers. And if need be, the state becomes the caretaker. And that's what prison is. And that's what becoming a ward of the state is. And so we're clear about this in some ways. But then on the other side, we really are hypocritical, I guess is what you have to call it, unclear about punishing children. And about, because we can say who's responsible. Well, when a child commits such heinous crimes, we can't separate who's responsible for that minor. Now, the parents, certainly. But here's the other side. Because when we want to look at crime and punishment, what actually is our intent? Are we just punishing, or are we rendering the public a more safe place? What is it about our society that produces juvenile criminals? That's the question that this ultimately comes back to when it talks about taking responsibility. As much as we can say, sweetheart, what it is about you and your parenting that has produced this monster, what is it about our society that produces juveniles who have patterns of crime that just seem random, like natural born killers, kind of like, I'm just going to go shoot up somebody. I mean, literally, if you hear about some of the crimes that are being discussed now that involve youth, just, somebody who like shot a woman between her eyes, drove off with her car with her 2 babies in back, was caught later, and the babies weren't in the car. They had been shot too between the eyes and thrown on the side of the road. This was a child. And you see crimes like this, like heinous crimes that we don't understand, that seem to make no sense. And the only way that they make sense is if you look at stuff like Grand Theft Auto. You're like, oh. Or if you look at our movies, you're like, oh. Like Natural Born Killers, or like any number of Hollywood movies, you're like, oh. That's the pattern of juvenile crime. So A, Hollywood is juvenile, but B, why is it that that is what we want to reinforce amongst young people, is how normal violence and crime is? Because all of our movies are full of crime. All of our news is full of crime. I mean, violence, sex crimes. I mean, violence and sex. If you look at all the movies, heck, it's usually, guys fight over girl, beats other guy through some heinous violence, and takes home the PUSSY. That's the storyline of like 95% of what comes out of Hollywood. And that is what's normal to us. That's what titillates us. That's what satiates us. Those movies make millions. We like that. So when we look at juvenile crime, I'm saying, what is it about us that likes that? And putting those kids away is not going to answer that question. They can be as removed from our society as we want them to be, and that's what I want to get back to. I have to talk about this also from a personal experience. I have a cousin, and let me just start off with this disclaimer. I will not testify against this person in court, and I don't have any facts to support what I know and what I'm about to say. Okay? That's my disclaimer. But I have a cousin who was born addicted to, I believe it was heroin, so he didn't have a chance, from the start. And he was in the system from the time he was labeled as, a bad kid, first, second grade. Um, you know, labeled as a bad kid for whatever it is we label, kids as bad for. But, really high aptitude. And he had been in social services because, his mother had been in prison, so he'd been in the system. His mother had been in prison at one time in his life. He witnessed his father hold a gun to his sister's head when he was an infant and beat his mother to a pulp. And she was absent, just absent as a parent in many ways because of what she was going through. In many ways, he had many family members that tried to compensate. I'm one of those cousins who literally would have to go out and look for him. Where is he? Where is he? 12 years old. So they'll make him about 9 years old. Looking for him at night because you out after the lights are, after the street lights are on, and that's a no-no. But he would be gone. He would be in fights, just random acts of violence, juvenile violence, the kind of rage that I think more and more Americans are seeing today. My cousin had that, and I grew up seeing that, and grew up with a lot of family attention going to dealing with that, including even my own energy and efforts to say, where is this boy, or what are you doing? And he would just do random stuff. He would steal, and right now he's probably selling drugs on the, well, I'm not going to say where, but if you read The Color of Water, you'll know where he's where he's selling drugs. And he hasn't done much with his life, even though he's a high aptitude person. And this is the kind of person that I feel like we are responsible for. Me as an individual, I have some responsibility. I'm not sitting here like I could have saved him. Not what I'm saying. But I do have the responsibility to sort of think through this, to talk about this, to encourage us not to repeat these patterns, because I do think that there's something much larger than getting that boy locked up and getting him away from us and us feeling any safer. That obviously doesn't work. Because there are plenty of them. There's something about where we are, especially in the western Louisville, that produces many people whose options in life are to do that. Whose very real options from first grade on, you can see it. We knew our cousin was like this we knew where our cousin was going since then. I knew that. And it's not just because people would warn him as a child, boy, if you keep on the way you're doing. No, it was quite clear where that behavior was and where society put him. And this is also what we do to children. What could we have done better? I don't know. We went through it with having, there's a lot. But love has brought us through. Love continues to bring us through, and that's the beautiful thing.